Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Let me start with an interview I did with the President of the Swiss Confederation, His Excellency President Alain Berset, and it really was a most engaging interview. I started with this cartoon that was posted by Victor Ndula, who I met on my trip up to Kakuma refugee camp, and in it, the cartoon, in a region where 90% of presidents have engineered term limit extensions, the one-year term limit Swiss President Alain Berset must be a curious case. Macro thoughts, we are in uncharted waters, Mobius says on Bloomberg. Indeed we are. The US is now moving forward with additional $200 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese goods, further escalating a trade war between the world's two largest economies. My piece on the weekend was called Tariff Wars, Who Blinks First? And I quoted Trump, who said 34, then you have another 16 in 2 weeks, and then, as you know, we have 200 billion in abeyance, and then after the 200 billion, we have 300 billion in abeyance, okay? So we have 50 plus 200 plus almost 300. That was Trump describing the potential escalation to reporters aboard Air Force One. Sounds ominous. China FX regulated chief companies should hedge to protect themselves against yuan's fluctuations. As we've discovered, the US is now moving forward with an additional $200 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese goods, further escalating a trade war between the world's two largest economies. I wrote over the weekend, President Trump, after bashing on Justin Trudeau of Canada and Mexico's Enrique Pena Nieto, now appended of course, and then firing a few broadsides at Europe, has now turned his attention to Xi Jinping and thrown him the keys, challenging him to a chicky run. Chicky run is from Rebel Without a Cause. China's offshore yuan falls near its lowest level since 2017, making it Asia's worst performing currency. Markets taking this latest news flow rather badly. David Inglis, Asia, US futures down, US dollar bonds bid, trade-related currencies worse off, copper falls to the lowest since last year. Wild chart from JS Blockland, Turkey 2-year government bond is up to 19.17%. Home thoughts, even if I'm crushed into powder, I will embrace you with ashes, said Liu Xiaobo, now deceased, about his wife, Liu Xia, who's been allowed to leave China after 8 years of being under house arrest. Nature unfolds her treasure at the first ray of sunrise, Kishore Bansal, via Finch Hattons. The sunrise took me to a play I studied when I was doing my A-levels. The Royal Hunt of the Sun is a 1964 play by Peter Shaffer that dramatizes the relation of two worlds entering in a conflict by portraying two characters, Atahualpa, the Inca leader, and Francisco Pizarro, the Spanish chancellor. And two quotations, one of my favorite. Have you ever climbed a mountain in full armor? That's what we did. Him going first the whole way up a tiny path into the clouds, with drops sheer on both sides into nothing. For hours we crept forward like blind men, the sweat freezing on our faces, lugging skittery, leaking horses, and pricked all the time for the ambush that would tip us into death. Each turn of the path it grew colder, the friendly trees of the forest dropped away, and there were only pines. Then they went too, and there just scrubby little bushes standing up in ice. All around us the rocks began to whine the cold, and always above us or below us, those filthy condor birds hanging on the air with great tasseled wings. 4 days like that, groaning, not speaking, the breath a blade in our lungs. 4 days slowly, like flies on a wall. Dying flies up an endless wall of rock, a tiny army lost in the creases of the moon. And then this Atahualpa speaking to Pizarro, who's captured him. You will die soon, and you not believe in your God. Believe in me, for you I will do a great thing. I will swallow death and spit it out of me. Powerful. Political reflections breaking. EU President says to Donald Trump, please respect your allies, you don't have that many. And then Hervé sent me a clip of what Trump has said to Jens Stoltenberg. It's really quite extraordinary. Daniel B. Shapiro caught my attention, and he said this: we could be on the cusp of a completely new era, a fundamental reshaping of the international order. And I don't mean over the course of the Trump administration, I mean by next week. It sounds outlandish to even say it out loud, and some can easily call this hyperbole. I hope to God it does not happen, but we would be insane not to grapple with the possibility. Trump clearly wants to pull the US out of NATO. He doesn't believe in the alliance or any alliances. He thinks our allies take advantage of us. He complains that NATO is worse than NAFTA, whatever that means. He seeks purely transactional relations with our closest partners. Should other NATO members meet their 2% of GDP defense spending targets? Absolutely. Trump is on solid ground to push for it. But to consistently trash allies, undervalue their contributions to our security, threaten to withdraw US troops, that's him wanting out. Perhaps most damaging is that his rhetoric is building up hostility to NATO among his supporters. It's a huge breach in the consensus American support for the alliance. Then what's more, his passionate desire for friendship with Putin is emboldening Russia and risks doing further damage to European security if he recognizes Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, if he seeks to turn down sanctions on Russia over its aggression versus Ukraine. Watch out. This could play out in the next 2 weeks if he sabotages the NATO summit the way he did the G7. Don't be surprised if he actually makes a move toward exiting NATO. Think he won't? On what basis? Because his staff restrains him? Because of his strategic understanding? Please. If we get there, the implications are innumerable and terrifying. Russia pawing at the Baltics and other European and Central European states, breakdown of joint defense structures, withdrawal of US troops from Euro bases, less restrained German foreign policy, weaker US power projection to Eurasia. That just scratches the surface. It could happen. Our president doesn't know the history or strategy, doesn't listen to experts, personalizes everything, and makes it transactional, and loves the drama of the outrageous move that dominates cable TV coverage. For him, pulling out of NATO is all gain and no cost. Even as I write this, it sounds fantastical. I will be the happiest person on the planet if I look back at this thread and say, man, you were way overreacting. But we need to be ready for this awful scenario to play out. I repeat, we are potentially on the verge of a wildly dangerous cascade of events that will devastate our interests, weaken our leadership, abandon our allies, embolden our adversaries, and make the world a darker and more brutal place. Powerful, I thought. I have NATO, the UK, and Putin. Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of all. Who would think, said Trump before going on his week-long trip. Asia Times is saying China resets the tone of US-North Korea talks. I was saying on the weekend, China has yanked Pyongyang's leash. Tories know they're one step away from a kind of Reservoir Dogs finale to this, with a form of circular firing squad. This is the Spectator editor Fraser Nelson explaining why he thinks Brexiteers are unlikely to succeed in toppling Theresa May. And that's why I thought sterling is a buy around these levels of 132.50. I think Theresa May has put the merry band of Brexiteers, Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, into a put up or shut up moment. Topple me and open the door wide for Jeremy Corbyn. She waited, then she struck a la Agatha Christie at Chequers. Boris Johnson's resignation was an act of desperation. He knows the verdict of history is about to come down on him and bury him. New York Times. And that's the point. As I said, Theresa May stabbed Boris Johnson with her steely knife at Chequers. There's no need to call Hercule Poirot. India is no longer home to the largest number of poor people in the world. Nigeria is. Extreme poverty rises in Nigeria by 6 people each minute, according to calculations by the World Poverty Clock. Meanwhile, the number of extreme poor in India drops by 44 people a minute. It's a good news story for India, coupled with some caveats, and it's a real wake-up call for the continent, said Homi Karas, Director of the Global Economy and Development Programme at the Brookings Institution. So the cat is officially out of the bag. Tomorrow's ICO report on FT front page, maximum possible fine for Facebook. And as I said, in December 2016, I wrote a piece, We Have a Deviated Tomahawk, and I was saying that my starting point then is the election of President Trump, because hindsight will surely show that Russia ran a seriously sophisticated program of interference, mostly digital. And I was quoting Don DeLillo, who's one of his short stories, The Specialist is monitoring data on his mission console, when a voice breaks in, a voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command. We have a deviate Tomahawk. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We are clearing an outframe to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise, your negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told them. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pigeon, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow, we were picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, and 60 years ago. Assad, aided by Russia, poised to snuff out a cradle of revolt. President Assad is poised to snuff out the Syrian rebellion in the place it first began more than 7 years ago, as rebels enter talks with his Russian allies on withdrawing from Deraa city or accepting a return of state authority. I conclude by saying you have to give it to the ophthalmologist, an accidental president of Bashar al-Assad. He is indeed the first to have seen off the regime changes. China's Silk Road isn't so smooth, says Bloomberg. Worth having a read. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 117.04, dollar index 94.23, dollar yen 111.20. Swiss franc 0.9922, the pound 132.49. The Australian dollar is at 0.7392, that's down very hard. India rupee 68.825, South Korean won 11.2164, the Rial 381.63, Egyptian pound 17.9075, and the Rand, this is going to run out of steam, 13.3951. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. We still remain below this key level of 95.50 for now. Euro rally stalls as ZWE index drops to minus 24.7 in July from minus 16.1. And that's the weakest since August 2012. I, however, continue to expect, after this correction, a rotation higher. We're at 117.04, breaking Tesla plans China plant with an annual capacity of 500,000 cars. Stalwart positive reaction in the share price. This is the Bloomberg Commodity Index log scale from UNCHARTED. Copper is tanking. The metal is seen as a bellwether for the global economy, falls to the lowest level in a year. Lost 2.9% early this morning. Oil falls below $74 a barrel after Trump raises the stakes in the trade war against China. Gold, let's have a look where that is. That's at 12.50.50 under pressure. Emerging markets, Turkey bonds continue to slide ahead of auctions. 2-year is at 20.43%, 10-year is at 17.84%. Sub-Saharan Africa, the UN report notes that high-level engagement, including with Kiir and Taban, did not stop the attacks in the south. Unity says that SPLA asserted command and control. That's from Lauren P. in DC. Africa Confidential, Zambia has been using foreign reserves to service its debt, but they are now so low that the Bank of Zambia has not updated its public figures since February, and well below the last reported figure of $1.8 billion. And I responded by saying, and copper is tanking now. Congo's Kabila delays UN chief's visit, refuses to see the US envoy, Nikki Haley. Kabila, who succeeded his assassinated father Laurent in 2001, was busy organizing December 23 elections and had to postpone a visit by Guterres and African Union Commission Chairman Moussa Faki. Mohammed, said Congolese government spokesman Lambert Mende. As for Nikki Haley, I don't see why and how the president's refusal to see her has created so much controversy. Nikki Haley was already in DRC and she met Kabila, said Kabila's state spokesperson Mende. Haley met privately with Kabila for 90 minutes in Kinshasa in October, warning him that a relationship with the United States is dependent on how he acts going forward. Diplomats said she'd planned to visit again this week. The US mission to the United Nations was not immediately available for comment on Haley's trip. Is it the case that in all African countries in the middle of the electoral process, these same visitors come to verify if the preparations are going in the right direction? If yes, they are also welcome in our country. Kabila was required by the Constitution to step down in December 2016, but the election to replace him has been repeatedly delayed. South African all shares down 2.48% this year. Dollar Rand, I think the Rand's a bit of a trading sell now after rallying all the way to 13.38. More diversity in the French and Belgian squads than in corporate South Africa's boardrooms, says Polsec analyst. Egyptian pound at 17.9023. Nigerian all share down 2.15% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 11.59% this year. DFCU Bank in liquidity crisis as shareholder quits. Eli Karuhanga, while addressing the media today, admitted that the exit of DFCU's biggest shareholder, CDC, has already thrown the bank into a liquidity crisis, with the bank struggling to raise requested loan monies to its customers. We don't know whether CDC is running away completely or selling part of its shares. So we don't really know what's going on. They've not made it officially clear to us. If they make it clear to us, we shall inform you, he said. In its letter, CDC expressed hope that DFCU would continue to succeed with the support of Arise BV, its major shareholder. CDC's investment in DFCU, according to the institution's official website, is $15.1 million of equity and $10 million of subordinated loan. So quite some drama there. This is mapping the credit ecosystem in Africa from Oreo Colo. Tea production is up 17% in 5 months on favourable weather here in Kenya. And I concluded by saying if you want to be an economist, you should be a meteorologist as well when it comes to matters sub-Saharan Africa, because good rains equals good economy, which is why I have a 6% full year forecast for GDP this year. Kenya's consumption of cement dipped to 1.4 million tonnes in the second quarter of the year, pointing to a persistent slowdown of activity in the real estate sector. Kenya shilling last at 100.85. Nairobi all share up 1.73% year to date, but down 11.401% since hitting a record high on April 5. NSE 20 down 0.1104%. And ARM has announced that the IFC is looking to take a stake and buy off its loans, which is a positive development, but one we need more clarity on. Once again, thank you for stopping by.